Tobii was founded in 2001, I believe, and they're actually a Swedish company. They got started in the field of eye tracking and building hardware and software for eye tracking purposes. And so that's basically wanting to record eye movements to understand where people's attention goes when they're in different environments. And at the time, eye tracking has actually been around since forever, goes back 50s easily. But the original eye tracking systems were head mounted. You wore a headset, you had cameras in front. The old systems even had a bite bar to hold your head still. So this course isn't very conducive to natural research to understand natural human behaviors and where attention flows naturally. So Tobii was really determined to develop the first systems that were not connected to the head in that format. They were just either up at the table near a screen, or to develop glasses, which they did later, which are just like safety glasses, essentially just like a regular pair of glasses, but they have tiny cameras built in that tracks your eyeball. And essentially when someone is wearing those glasses and looking into the environment around them, there's a series of cameras that creates a 3D model of that eyeball and tracking as it's turning. And so it's tracking where the iris is focused, where the pupil is focused at all times. And there's a camera at the top of the glasses that tracks the environment. So we're then able to, in our research, able to see exactly where people are looking as they're looking around in their environment. And it is non-invasive, right? You're just wearing a pair of glasses. So the benefit of using eye tracking in this particular study, and especially working with Tobii, is again, we have these glasses that people can wear, and they're so light and comfortable that people literally forget they're wearing them. And so it's become very popular for research in really more than natural environments, right? We're trying to get away from any kind of controlled setting of like people coming to a test facility and them just, showing us a very controlled environment. What's really nice with these Tobii glasses is that we send people out in stores, we eye track people in their own homes, we eye track people doing what they normally do in their day-to-day lives. And so it gives us a real honest view into what they're experiencing around them. And these glasses, what they do, again, it records not only the environment, and we see what people are exposed to every day and all the distractions, but we also see exactly where they're looking. And these glasses record at really high frequency. I think the newest ones I know at least 120 hertz, if not even higher at this point, per second. And the thing is, the eyes move so quickly, and people don't realize that. There's so much that we're looking at in any given moment, and our brain is only processing just a small portion of that. And so to see what actually people are looking at and just kind of disregarding, and your brain doesn't even realize you looked at it, is incredibly valuable, right? Because now if someone misses seeing something, is it that they never actually looked at it? Or they looked at it but glanced at it so fast and their brain immediately said, yep, not important, and forgot about it. Like there's different levels of attention. And by using these glasses, so there's a couple benefits here. One is they're so comfortable. You forget you're wearing them. You just get engaged in what you're normally doing. They don't interfere with anything you're doing. And two, they're recording at such a high frequency that it's capturing all that fast eye movement and really identifying with much more clarity, like how the attention is captured and what holds the attention in that environment. So for screening purposes, it was very important to us that we kind of pick sort of the typical person who watches TV, but not only, but is exposed to different types of TVs. In other words, that they also still watch the regular, like the local and the cable television, that they watch streaming, that they watch all the different types of television, because we wanted people who are exposed to all the different types of content that we're testing. We didn't want it to be something so new and different in terms of the television space. So that kind of was one piece. And the another piece that was very important to this was screening for just kind of what they like to watch. We wanted to make sure that when they saw the test material that we were using, or in this case, the show that we were using, that it wasn't just automatic rejection of it, or that it was something they didn't relate to. Like we wanted to be something that if they were sitting down in the evening to watch TV, this is something they might actually watch. And the way we did that was just to include a series of, or list of episodes and types of television, and just said, hey, what do you typically watch? So we wanted to make sure that it kind of was something that they're comfortable with, that they would normally engage with. And then of course, we also have to screen for people that were willing to let us come into their home and set up the glasses and eye tracking for them. So you're comfortable with that. And it really was a great experience. And we've done actually a lot of studies like this where we go into people's homes and then they put the glasses on and they're either getting eye track while they're cooking or going out and doing any kind of chores or even feeding their pets. We've done studies like that. So that was kind of the screening process. And then the actual setup, it was very important also in creating, sort of getting that test material ready, is there were three platforms that we were testing. And one thing we want to make sure of is that we controlled for order effect. So we didn't want to show the same advertising experience, show it in the same order every time, because we do know from past research and just past experience that engagement with the television is going to change over time. Like in the beginning, maybe they're more interested, and then after a while they get bored or stop watching, and you'll see kind of the attention drop off. Or maybe in the beginning, they're not as interested, they're still preoccupied with work or something else. And as they're watching, they get more engaged. So we've definitely seen that just time is always a factor when it comes to attention, especially viewing television. So it's important to us to make sure that we randomize the order of those experiences. We did keep the episodes in order to kind of create that stable context. But within that space, we randomized the order of the ads so we wouldn't have that effect. And then the other part of it too was just really encouraging the participants to just watch TV however they normally do. They were encouraged to have their phones with them or tablets or anything else they normally have with them, books, magazines, whatever might normally distract them. They were also told if they wanted to take a break, they could take a break. So we really wanted that to be as natural as we could. And especially the phone was kind of the most important piece, right? Because that's really another research we've done. It's the phone these days that's the distractor. It's the phone that people pick up. As soon as an ad comes up, they'll pick up their phone and take a look and update themselves on what's going on there. So the ads missed entirely. So in a way you can look at that as kind of saying, okay, however many number of ads there are in each platform experience, let's call those each data points. And so if there were, and I think there may have been around 15 in each experience, something around there. So one question was, well, how many ads were missed completely, right? And they just weren't, suggesting that they're looking at their phones or doing something else or not watching at all. So that's looking at the entire ad experience, right? So that's already a big deal. Like if they're missing ads entirely, well, those ads aren't working. They're not doing the job. But then you saw all these ads that they were watched. Well, then the question is, well, yes, but were they watched from the beginning or were they only watched like a portion of it? And it's very typical. So if they're not watching from the beginning, the chance of bringing them back into the ad is very low. Like maybe if there's a loud noise or just something unique or different or flashy, maybe you'll get them back. But if you don't have them at the start of that ad, it's really hard to get them to come back. So it's always really valuable to see, do you catch them right at the start, especially when you're coming out of an episode that you're just watching, right? Because that's the moment, like that's the decision point as it's converting to an ad. This is the moment where they're going to say, oh, ad's coming up. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go do something else. And then any transition from one ad to the next, same thing, right? It's going to be that transition of like, okay, I might step away here. So we look at that. Then we also want to look at like the entire ad experience, all the seconds of ads, like the entire time frame of ads. So, and I think we had maybe 4 or 5 minutes worth of ads. So 600 seconds. We could look at it, the data points down to fixations, and we'll maybe get to that here in a minute. But that's like looking at the entire. So this is now whether it's from the beginning or not, but it's kind of sticking all the ads together for that whole platform and saying what percentage of time was spent looking at the ads, that whole segment versus something else. So this is taking into account that people might look at the ads, they might look down, they might look back, and there might be some back and forth. They might glance at their phone, but how much are they glancing on their phone within these ads? So it's kind of a sort of 3 levels of looking at this. And at every level, yeah, the AI enabled outperform the other platforms. Yeah, I find that really interesting. And we do quite a bit of ad research. And in fact, that goes way back when I first started in eye tracking. That was one of the big things when kind of the internet took off and they had banner ads. And it was fascinated me because with eye tracking, you could just see the patterns of viewing attention. Like banner ads would catch people's eyes, and then after a little while, you'd see them just very deliberately just avoiding the banner ads. So then they came up with a new ad, the embedded ad, and then the dynamic ad. And, you know, over the years, they came up with different ads, and you'd see people would learn to avoid those ads, and they'd have to come up with something new. And I find it fascinating because people will say they avoid ads, they don't like ads, they don't watch ads. But in the end, they do. Like, they will watch ads if they're good ads, right? And if they're engaging ads. Like, and it's you still see it, and then it's fascinating to understand, well, what is it that makes it good? Is it that makes it engaging and draws them in? And to your point, they were engaged with other ads. So even in the that they weren't AI enabled, right? They did engage with some ads, and themes that came up with just ads being more engaging. Of course, the most common was relevance. And I would almost argue maybe not so much relevance, but let's not make it irrelevant, right? Nowadays, everyone expects targeting. Everyone expects it to somehow speak to them. So at a minimum, it should be relevant and familiar. But then if you get into some of the more details, things that they liked, or if they were more of a conversation with the viewer, if it's familiar, if it's something that they're interested in, if it has a tone that they like, that, you know, if it's more entertaining, if it has familiar characters or familiar themes that they like, or lifestyle that's kind of familiar to them, kind of the things that they relate to are all what they find more engaging. Certainly good music can help, and bright colors, things like that can certainly help as well. So that's kind of the typical engagement. What was fascinating then with the AI enabled ads is that they did all that and they did more, right? Because they were watching a show that they enjoyed. They enjoyed the characters, they enjoyed the actors, they enjoyed the content. And now ads came up, and they enjoyed the style. It was a comedy. And now ads came up with the same actors in it, and the same characters, and the same comedy, like some of this comedy in it, and some of the same products and the same things that they just saw that were familiar. And so it was all, and since they had chose to watch this show, they were now experiencing ads that they could relate to and that were familiar. So it was almost like a whole new level of kind of that connection that they had, that drove that engagement. And it was just, and I think another big comment on it, what I thought was really interesting, and especially like using some of the same characters, like it was like a seamless point. Like we talked about earlier, the importance of like, when that episode comes, or the break comes in the episode and you transition to ad, like that's your moment of truth right there. You know what I mean? Like that's like, they're going to get up and go or they're not. And by kind of using, like having it so similar to that content they were just watching, they're like, whoa, it's kind of still going on. I'm still entertained. I almost want to keep watching. And we even had comments saying that they didn't want to get up or do something else. Like they wanted to keep watching because this was really entertaining. This was engaging. And so it took it to like this next level of engagement that participants really responded well to. That came up quite often because kind of back to that relevance before, or with non-enabled, you kind of get the feedback that it's like, hey, it's entertaining, but I'm really in the end going to remember it only if it is something that I am looking for as a product, right? Or a brand, or something that, you know, I already have a connection with. And what this, and or if there's a beginning of an ad that immediately you kind of see a product, you're like, yep, nope, that's nothing to do with me, you disengage. So it's not, if it's not a product that kind of is connecting, or it's something familiar, something you want, there's that connection, or that even that opportunity for them to remember it or hold on to it is lost. But now if it's set within this context that they're watching for another reason, right? It's like, oh, the same actor, the same character, or it's the same style, or it's comedy. They're watching it, right? And now they're engaging with it. And now it's like, oh, they remember that product, right? We had higher recall, both aided and unaided. And so several of them commented saying, well, yeah, I wouldn't buy that. But now if I'm in conversation with a friend of mine, I'm more likely to bring that up because I remember it, because I actually was engaged when there was a commercial about it, and I learned about it. So it was really neat to kind of see that, right? It was like, it was making AI enabled ads was helping with kind of creating that opportunity where they actually did pay attention and then would remember that particular product. That's another good question, and it was an interesting observation. And I think it goes back to like what we were talking about with targeting, right? Pretty much everybody these days expects targeting. And so you expect it to be relevant. And you also expect it to be, I guess in a way to think about it is like what you're watching, you kind of expect it almost to be kind of a reflection of yourself, right? If targeting is going well, like this is me. And or a reflection of the channel or the show, right? But there's kind of this like, it's all kind of related and connected. And so in the cases where and it was somewhat intentional, we were trying to kind of create a little bit of a jarring experience to see what was going to be the response to that. And where you kind of had two different kind of conflicting messages, and it was exactly that, was very jarring because, to the point where like some people were actually almost kind of upset about this, like some emotional reaction to this, which fascinated me because it's like, well, it's just television, it's just ads. But there's another piece to this going on, is that if you think about, we kind of tested the CCTV ads where there's no targeting at all, super generic. You got commercial, you got pharmaceutical ads or car commercials, but very like basic, generic. And people, like I said, they have this expectation of, I'm not going to watch ads, I'm going to take a break. They're disengaged, they're disconnected. But then if you have targeted ads and it's designed to relate and be familiar, you start connecting, right? And you're connected, you're paying attention, you are investing your attention and your time into this. And it feels fine, it feels good, it's a reflection of me. But then if you suddenly have two ads that are conflicting, you're just like, whoa, what just happened, right? And especially because they're watching TV, like this is like their relaxing time. They don't want to get into like heated discussions and debates, and they're just relaxing. And so now, but here's a moment where they're in a space, they're connected, it's a little bit of some self-reflect, it's reflecting them. And to have conflict in that space is particularly jarring and confusing. And then there's a moment of like, what just happened? And there's a struggle with trying to understand, why did it happen and who's responsible? Like, that doesn't make sense, because if you think about everything these days is like so customized and like so developed to just align with you perfectly, to suddenly have a moment where it doesn't is just this really, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. We had, like I said, some people that were just like, didn't like that. And they, even though they didn't necessarily say, oh, I'm never gonna, buy that brand or whatever, but it was more like they acknowledged that was strong enough that they could feel that later, that they could feel that if they were shopping and they saw that again, it would, their memory that they would have is more of that jarring experience rather than a positive experience, right? So it was fascinating to see that, and the level of kind of a reaction that they had. In fact, that was because that was a comment. I remember one person said, they're like, wow, I'm wondering which intern is going to get fired for this one. There was an assumption that was a mistake, and it wasn't, again, necessarily directed at the product or the brand or the commercial, but it was like somewhere in there, something went wrong, and kind of thinking that was the platform, it was somewhere somebody made a mistake. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like, it's hard to say then where the consequences of that, but it definitely was a strong response. I think, to me, I think what was interesting, like this, I feel like this AI enabled ad experience, like I said, overall was just very positive. But there's also, to me, what fascinates, like this is a new experience and kind of new opportunities to learn how people respond. And I think, as with anything, it's like, well, what's the optimal way of using this? So I think like learning and applying like the art kind of right. And the finesse of like, how do you package this, right? And not leaning too heavy into one or the other. But I think, and that's what was just kind of fun, because we had a couple of people responding later, once they kind of were understanding a little bit of what was going on, they're like, well, this is fun and this is kind of interesting. Like they were almost eager to see like what were they going to come up with next in terms of what type of content. So yeah, I think it's exciting to see. There was a lot of new responses for sure that I encountered, and reactions, and that I hadn't seen before in this research space when it comes to advertisement. So yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next.